One of my favorite ones more recently is at the beginning of last year, my wife and I were in Florida to see our youngest son. He's stationed in the Air Force out there. And while we were gone, a young man visited services with his 3-year-old son. And so the next week we were back in town, and obviously I was preaching, and that young man came back with his son, and this time he had his wife and his wife's sister with him. And so it took me a couple of months to get him into an actual Bible study. And he was like a sponge, just absorbing it all. Everything that I told him, he was just excited to learn and more and more and more. And we eventually baptized him, and he's on fire. He was asking me just a couple of weeks ago, what does he need to do to evangelize his brother, or to evangelize, to talk to people at work? Where do we start? What do I begin with, and things like that. And about every other Thursday, we go to his home. I go to his home, sometimes just me, sometimes it's me and my wife together. And we've been studying with him, but in more recent studies, his wife and his sister-in-law have also joined us. So through our studies with him, we're really gaining this opportunity to study also with his wife and sister-in-law.
So one makes many, just get out there.
Absolutely. That's how
So
it
tell
works.
us, that's right. Tell us who you are, what your name is, where you're from, and an interesting fact.
So I am Sam Dilbeck. I'm married to my high school sweetheart, Julie. We have two adult sons, Jason and David, and we work with Julie and I work with the church in Brighton, Colorado. As I mentioned, my youngest son lives in Florida, and my oldest son lives in Texas. And so we're all scattered across the United States. And maybe an interesting fact is I wear a lot of flannel. But I spoke at Chapel at Bear Valley this morning, and so I had to wear something better than flannel. So I just hadn't changed my shirt.
You can put the flannel on underneath the shirt.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Well, as you know about this show, we talk about strategies. So let's get into it. What are some evangelism strategies, even for the person that that just became a Christian? That they'd love that you probably told them some strategies that will help people who share their faith bravely.
Well, several years ago, I developed an idea that when you talk to people about evangelism, it seems that they're always afraid of something, one thing or another, and a lot of times it's I'm going to say the wrong thing, or I'm going to alienate people or something like that. So I just started telling people, just say something. Uh, you That's the beginning of evangelism. Say something. And I like that as my mantra. If we're stymied by fear of what others are going to think, or that our friends are going to abandon us, or that our families are going to fight with us, and strangers are just going to look at us awkward and slip away or move away from us, so we don't say anything at all, or we're afraid to say anything. But I'm reminded of Jesus at the well of Samaria, when the Samaritan woman comes, and he says, "Give me something to drink." And we look at that and we say, "Well, that's a pretty simple request," but it was so monumental in that moment, because uh, Jesus defied the very cultural norms, and he spoke to a strange Samaritan woman, and it shocked her. She says, she even asked, "How can you, a man, a Jew, ask me, a Samaritan woman who is a stranger, for water?" But what it did is it started a conversation. And listen, we may not always have that groundbreaking, give me something to drink, but and our opening line may not be that earth shattering, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be magical. It just has to be, to me, sincere and approachable. And in other words, I heard of this was a few generations ago, but I knew the man when he was elderly, and he would knock doors, and he told one man, asked him, when the man opened the door, he said, "What religion are you?" And the man told him, and he made some derogatory comment about that particular religion that man was. And the bad part is yes, he said something, but he didn't say something sincere and approachable. And by sincere, I simply mean you're concerned about him. It was C.S. Lewis that said that you're not going to talk to a mere mortal. Everyone we talk to is immortal. Everyone we talk to has an eternal future. And so approach any situation with that sincerity that says, I want them to be saved.
Right
And
on.
the idea of approachable is that what you say opens a conversation instead of shuts one down. And so when you're sitting in a ball game with other parents watching your kids, say something. When you're
Take
waiting
them.
at the table, when you're waiting at Chili's for another table to open up, and then there's another group waiting too, say something to them. If you and a stranger are inspecting produce at Kroger's, say something. If your waiter comes to the table, engage them and say something. I don't have any tattoos, but I'm kind of interested in body art, what people put on their body and think that this needs to be there. And so if a waiter or waitress comes and they have a tattoo on their lower arm or something, I'll always ask. I said, well, what does that mean? Why did you get that or something? Or tell them, that looks nice. That's some good artwork or something. Just engage them and engage them in a way again that shows sincerity and approachability.
Right.
Um,
That's good. That's good.
I would say also that sometimes our fears that we're going to say the wrong thing, and that goes back to that sincerity and approachability. Uh, don't lead off with why you think denominational people are lost and you want to save them. Start by engaging on common ground, and I think that's what Jesus did. He's sitting at a well, wanting a drink of water, but he doesn't have anything to draw with. She's coming to the well. She has something to draw with. And so that's the common ground, the well, the water, getting a drink. And he uses that. And if you're both inspecting tomatoes at Kroger, hey, how do you tell it, what's your method of telling the tomato is right? If you're at a ball game with other parents and your kids are in little league, there's a million things that you could say. Hey, do you have any other kids that are playing ball? Uh, you know, after ball is over, do y'all after baseball is over, do you go into little league football or do you go to soccer? Dance or whatever. What other activities does your daughter do or something like that? Or and then what's important here is listen to the response. And I oftentimes people who have canned evangelistic methods, they they have this one question they always ask, and if the person answers in this way or this way, they've got a response ready to go. And to me that becomes it comes across as forced and insincere. And then you're not really listening to the response, you're listening for a response. Well, let's quit doing that. Let's listen to the response and then respond back to them accordingly. uh, that's what Jesus did, and I think that's important. And so, uh, follow up on those responses. It's hard to follow up with a meaningful response if you didn't listen to what they said.
Right. Yeah.
And
And I
so,
think what's good is when you engage, you also pray. So you might not have an idea of what to say when you're talking.
hmm
You might just say, "Hey, about those tomatoes." But if you're praying that time, then God will work with you if there's an opportunity.
yeah,
Because sometimes there's not going to be an opportunity. You're going to say, "How are those
yeah,
tomatoes?" And they're going to be like, "They're good."
yeah,
But the key is,
absolutely,
is the key is to engage, like to keep trying, to keep
yeah.
talking. That's the key, isn't it?
Some people will shut you down with a one or two word response and walk away, and that's on them. But
That's all.
it doesn't take a long prayer. God, if I'm going to go talk to this person at the tomato section, would you open their heart? I mean, that's all of 5 seconds,
Yep.
and you can do that as you're approaching. And then the third thing I would say is evangelism is about building relationships. So spend time with people, open your home to have dinner with your coworkers, schoolmates, take a pie to your neighbor for no reason at all, but don't take a store bought pie. Um, Take treats to the fire station, help people load groceries in the cars down at the Albertsons. It's a particularly rainy day, get you one of those big golf umbrellas as people step outside, hold the umbrella, walk them to their car, even offer to help them put the groceries in the car. I mean, it's something simple. It shows that you care about people. They don't know you from Adam. If on the walk out there they say something, I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you so much. Say, not a problem. I just want people to know the love of Christ. Oh, are
Yes.
you a Christian? Yeah, I'm a Christian. And where do you go to church? And there's your conversation. It's all started just because you did something nice. Volunteer. If you have time, volunteer at hospital, at a school, nursing home, a library, wherever they can use a helping hand, and just engage, 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 engage. Um, the more people you engage, the more opportunities you have to get people into Bible studies. The more Bible studies you have, the more people you will convert. You won't
Yeah,
win them all, but just because you won't win them all doesn't mean you don't try for some.
that's right. Well, like we compete. Like I said, running the race, you compete to win. You might
Yeah,
not win the way you feel, but you'll be farther ahead than if you never competed.
yeah. I mean, look at Jesus again in John 4. Where is Jesus? Jesus is sitting at the water cooler of the day.
Yeah,
There's a water cooler at work. People will eventually go there. That's where Jesus was, and someone was sure to come by, and he would engage them. And it happened to be this woman from Samaria, and I'm sure she's thinking, "I'm glad he sat there."
yeah,
Uh, and then, of course, that be sincere again. This is an outgrowth of your nature. If don't force it. Uh, okay, so sometimes we're introverted and we've got to force ourselves to talk, but we sometimes we just need to retrain ourselves
right.
to be more open and speak of those things.
Well, he asked from her something.
Hmm.
He didn't just come up and he didn't go, "Hey, do you know about the Messiah or anything?" Like he just
Yeah.
said, "Can I get some water?" Like that's
Do you
it.
know?
And
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And we generally start on the mundane and we move to the spiritual. That's what Jesus
hmm,
did. If we look at John 4,
yep,
I think that Christological method is something that we can look to. We can start with the mundane. Uh, it doesn't have to be someone coming to church with me. It can be, hey, me and a couple of families from work went bowling, the mundane. But
hmm,
while bowling, we struck up a conversation about spiritual things, the spiritual. We moved from the mundane to the spiritual. It's the way Jesus often did it.
that's it. So anybody can invite people to do stuff. Anybody can go volunteer to help people. That is
Absolutely.
something that you can do, and then you just got to have that next level of engaging, and that's
Hmm.
that's it. So you got another like evangelism story.
Sure. So this was probably 10 years ago, and I got a call from a sister in the congregation where I was preaching at the time. Her name was Ruth. And Ruth and her husband, Bronny, were at the hospital. Uh, her mother in law was in the ICU. And so at certain times during the day, they would open the ICU for visitors. And then they would, it might only be a 15-minute period. And then those visitors would go back to the ICU waiting room. And so they were there for a few days. And there was this woman who was there with a small child that was also there. And finally, Ruth was talking to her and she said, who are you here for? That's a common question in an ICU waiting room like that. And the woman got a little nervous and she looked at her and they'd already been talking about some other stuff. So she felt somewhat comfortable with Ruth and she told her, she said, well, honestly, I was living with my aunt. She kicked me out of the house. I've been living in the car. The weather got cold. And so we came in here to spend the night. And Ruth called me immediately. The church building was across the street from the hospital. I was a chaplain at the hospital, so I grabbed my chaplain badge. I ran across the street, talked to the woman, found out what her story was. We got her into some temporary housing. A month or so later, we got her into a more permanent situation. Uh, Julie and I, my wife, we began studying with her, and she eventually obeyed the gospel. She was still there in that town for about 2 years after that, and then she wanted to move back to the Northeast in Connecticut, where her father was, and was going to take care of her father. Before she even left, she was talking to one of the elders, and she said, "Can you help me find a congregation in the Northeast?" And so we found her a congregation, and as far as I know, she's still attending and very faithful up there. And so it's here it was just a Christian who said something.
That's right, the engaging part, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, yeah. So we have talked about being sincere and approachable, right? Engaging and getting on common ground and engaging and listening. So what are some what can we call it? Like do a call to action for everybody listening. Like what's some things we can encourage them to do?
I yeah, that my mantra, just say something.
Just say something.
Starting a conversation, even if you feel like it might be the wrong thing, we oftentimes have an opportunity to fix it. But I dare say that most of the time, whatever you say will start you on the conversation you need to have.
Right.
Don't
Yeah.
be so afraid.
No, no. Open your mouth and you could save, save someone's life just from
Absolutely.
that. Now, let's give a practical, maybe a practical goal. So everybody goes shopping for food. So
Hmm.
when you go into the grocery store or whatever, uh, as you're checking out, just say hello to the teller and say, "How you doing?" There we go.
Absolutely. Hey,
Try
they've got
that.
a name. They've got a name badge on. Call them by their name. I would say meet someone new this week, whether it's grocery store, wherever it
Good.
is. That should be your challenge. Meet someone new, and be observant to your surroundings and engage a stranger on common ground. If you watch any of the detective shows, they're looking around for clues and they see things that a lot of us don't see. Maybe. Well, be that detective. Look around. Be observant. Figure out look, if they're walking through the aisles of of a grocery store in Colorado and they're wearing an Oklahoma Sooner shirt, hey, I've already got common ground. You know, oh, are you a Sooner fan? Are you from Oklahoma? Yeah, I'm from Oklahoma. Well, what part of Oklahoma did you grow up in? Because I grew up in Oklahoma. Hey, we've got common ground. Maybe for you, maybe you're an Alabama fan, and you see someone wearing an Auburn shirt, and it might be a playful, oh no, they let the riffraff in or something like that, about their Alabama, rivalries, are a good place to start. It's the mundane, but use that to jump off to the spiritual.
Right. And everybody listening, just think of it about this. Someone came to you and told you about Jesus, and even more importantly, Jesus came himself, and he gave up a lot of things to come tell us about the hope we have in him. So he said, "Follow me." So we follow him, just like you talked about. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Be Brave. The world right now is a crazy place, and sharing the love of God is the most important thing we can do right now. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit up gobebrave.org. Remember, the love of God is the most powerful force in the universe. Learn how to love like Jesus. See you next time.